We got to talk about the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are on a 4-game losing streak. They are 4-6 in their last 10. They are 13-17, sitting at the 12th spot in the Western Conference. And I really want to talk about the sad reality of the future of this organization more so than just this singular season. And before I start, I want to say that this video is a little bit bittersweet. I wasn't somebody that was high on the Kings coming into the season. I kind of felt they were going to take a step back and be one of the outside teams looking in. And there is still a lot of basketball left. I will remain somebody that's saying that to remind everybody that we are still in December and there's months and months of basketball left for teams to figure out things. But on the other side of that, the Kings a couple years ago were the darlings of the NBA. I don't know one person that was rooting against the Sacramento Kings, rightfully so. They deserved everything that they were achieving from the organization and the drought of not being able to play high level competitive playoff basketball, and more so than just the organization and the team itself. Their fan base deserved that, and to see them have that moment, to see them lighten the beam and be able to play playoff basketball and the atmosphere and the environment, it was so refreshing and it was so fun to witness that and experience it. And it's kind of sad that not much time is going by and it's kind of in the reverse. It's not having that same momentum. It doesn't have that same feel. It doesn't have that same joy. And we're kind of seeing this organization plateau with just a minimized moment. And that to me is the sad part of all of this. We're going to talk about the current state of the team and different reasons why they're not where they should be or could be. But ultimately, for me, I look at this team and I see all of the surrounding pieces, right? So first and foremost, you look at somebody like De'Aaron Fox, and we all understand his contract situation and the added stories that we've gotten recently, or not even stories, but information, kind of makes this sad reality even a little bit more sadder because De'Aaron Fox and Rich Paul have basically said they're not requesting a trade, but they are looking at the Sacramento Kings and how they're handling things and positioning the team and the organization for a future where De'Aaron Fox can be on a team that competes. This is stuff that De'Aaron Fox said himself on the Draymond Green podcast when he was talking to Draymond and Baron Davis about the importance of being on a team that has a future that is a lot more better and competitive than being at the end or back end of the Western Conference playoff race. He doesn't want to be on a play-in team that's trying to get a 7 or 8 seed year in and year out just to have a first round exit. You know what I mean? And I don't think he's too wrong for that. And if you're a Kings fan, or if you're somebody that's just watching this video, this is why I bring up some of the things that I do. Because when I look at a Sacramento Kings team who's not necessarily a big market, yeah, they're on the West Coast, but this is not like some free agent destination that everybody is lining up to be at. You know what I mean? This isn't a team that has all of the assets in the world to make monstrous moves and to just overnight put a crazy team around De'Aaron Fox. And that is the part that worries me, right? It's a bunch of the issues that exist now, which we're going to get to. But when you look at the avenues that they have to save this season or to even save the future seasons, I just don't see them. It does not exist without involving De'Aaron Fox. So your option is to take a chance and keep this middle of the pack, or I guess end of pack team together and just pray for the best and force De'Aaron Fox to force his way out and call his bluff. Or you kind of have to, bite the bullet and just say we have to think about our future and make De'Aaron Fox available of some sorts. And I know a lot of King fans hate to hear it because De'Aaron Fox is an incredible player, and as good as a player he is, all that I've heard, he's just as good of a person. I actually heard that he was just doing like giveaways and stuff for Christmas, and has always been a pillar and a staple in the Sacramento community, and has talked about wanting to be a King player for life, one team type of guy. But at the end of the day, a lot of these players who are as good as De'Aaron Fox, they want to continue to live on the high of competing. And I can imagine the high and the feeling that he got playing in a 7-game series against the Warriors. And, Steph Curry having to have a legacy defying almost game to beat them in 7. You have a craving of wanting that and to not just have that moment back, but to be able to have the outcome being on your side and being able to play in a second round or a conference finals, God forbid, a NBA finals. You know what I mean? Players want that. I know a lot of players out here just chasing their bag and chasing their fame and status. That's definitely real. But there are guys like De'Aaron Fox who just literally want to compete and play at the highest level on that stage because he has to feel like a guy that is a lot better than his respect is, I would say. You know what I mean? I know he looks at a lot of the conversations that people have about point guards and players, and he does get his love and his props. But I would imagine that he looks at some of those lists and be like, I think I'm better than him. Or I think I'm better than him. Or if you give me his team, I don't think anything changes. If you put me over there with and let me play with him and him and him, I think we have the same success or we even have more success. Or if you switch me and this guy, I don't know if this Kings team is as good as, we've been as I've elevated into all-star status. I would have to imagine that that's what his process of thinking is, because that's mine. I don't want to name no names and name no teams, but I look around the league and I look at some of the positions that some of these other guards are in, and I say, man, you put De'Aaron Fox over there, that team might be even better. That's just the thinking that I have. You know what I mean? Playing with the Sacramento Kings, I know it has been tough. And to see them turn around, it's on a lot of, De'Aaron Fox's back to have gotten them this far. Now, as far as this season and being 13-7, again, it only amplifies the concerns that somebody like me and the rest of the basketball world is going to have with this team. You have Mike Brown, who was, a wonderful voice and coach for them to start the avalanche of this team, kind of turning everything around, and they had such beautiful moments. But right now, this team is just not anywhere near that they should be. They are 30th in expected wins, which means that they are projected to be a totally different team than what their record possesses. And that part of that is because they have not been good in the crunch time. I think they're 3-9 in games that are decided by 5 or less points, which is kind of crazy when you have De'Aaron Fox and then you go into the offseason acquiring somebody like DeMar DeRozan. You look at the team and there are a lot of statistical things that just kind of don't make sense on how they're going to figure out how to win. And I'm going to show y'all some of these things as I look through it. So one of the first things I want to bring up is just how they defend the three-point line. Right now, they are giving up about 15 made threes per game. And that is 28th in the NBA. That's bottom of the barrel in the entire NBA. The most sought-after shot that NBA teams are going into the game. Like we're having a conversation on social media. Everybody's talking about three-point shots. There's a phenomenon of three-point shooting or whatever, and they are a part of the NBA as well. But I guess they haven't gotten a memo. They're allowing teams to make nearly 15 threes a game. Teams are shooting around 40 attempts per game, and they're making almost 38% of those three-point attempts. It's going to be extremely hard in the NBA when you cannot stop teams from getting good three-point shots. If you're giving up 38% shooting from three, that means you're giving up high-quality looks. That means that teams are generating extremely good looks. There's no way that you're guarding the three-point line very well, and teams are just making good three-point shots. There's just no way. And the fact that they're almost taking 40 means that that's a shot that they know that they can get. Teams have figured out ways to generate three-point shots against the Sacramento Kings. A lot of that, to me, in my opinion, because I do watch a lot of Kings games because they do play on the West Coast. They're often one of the last or late games playing. And a lot of their games, to me, are exciting because it's close and or high scoring for the most part. During this 4-game losing streak, the Kings have not been able to score the ball like they usually are. Scoring like less than 100 points in a bunch of these games. But usually you'll have the Denver Nuggets type game where it's 130, 129, and the theatrics are there and everything. And that was a very back and forth fourth quarter of just scoring and scoring and scoring. And for a basketball fan like myself, I enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoy that style of basketball. Always have, always will. It's fun to watch. But yeah, they just do not guard the three-point line as well as I think that they should. On the flip side of that, to kind of make it a double whammy, so to speak, when you talk about the three-point shot again and the importance and how everybody is seeking it, the Sacramento Kings are kind of the opposite. They don't seek it as much. As you can see that they're only shooting 34.8, nearly 35 shots a game from three. They are only making around 12 threes a game, and they're shooting it at a 34% clip. So if you're not emphasizing the three-point line in your offense and you're not guarding it, that means essentially your bread and butter is twos. They are a mid-range heavy team, obviously, going out and getting DeMar DeRozan. And then you have De'Aaron Fox, who's an incredible mid-range shooter. Keegan Murray, I know he's not shooting a basketball like we know him to be, but he's always been a guy that could shoot the three and the mid-range. You have the Malik Monks. Sabonis is obviously going to play more in the interior. Kevin Huerter's not shooting the basketball good right now. You're a heavy, dominant two-point scoring team. Your twos are not going to match up with the three-point shots that your opponents are getting. And just with that ideology, just saying, hey, we're going to play with twos and we're going to give up threes at a 38% clip, you're kind of burying yourself before the game even starts, if that's the mentality. And to further prove what I'm saying, we look at right here, this is just the frequency. This is how frequent they're shooting and what type of shots they're chasing. They are number one in the NBA on mid-range jump shots. They have the most mid-range frequency in the entire NBA comes from the Sacramento Kings. They're number one in long mid-ranges. They're number two in short mid-ranges. They're 29th in frequency of shots at the rim. So the rim and the three, which is the now analytically driven offenses of what teams are going into, like that's the opposite of Daryl Morey. Remember Daryl Morey with the Houston Rockets and James Harden? It was like, we want a layup or we want a three-point shot. The Kings this season in 30 games are basically saying, hey, we don't want shots at the rim. We don't want threes. Just get a bunch of mid-range shots. And when you look at how they are guarding the three-point shot, again, it's not a recipe. And I'm not a big analytics guy. I am a basketball savant type of person who is, grew up on the game and went through a lot of different eras. I have been taught and raised to believe that the game should be played in a certain way of whatever the defense or the opponent is giving you is what you take. So I'm not going into an NBA game saying we're just going to live at the midi. We're just taking a midi. No. However a team is playing us is how we're going to play. We want to be prepared for every single thing. We have our ideologies. We have our strengths. We have our schemes. We have our spots that we want to get to. But we also are we're going to use analytics and stats to also help us. We're not going to ignore the numbers and the analytics. We're just not going to base everything we do off of it because we're not robots. We are human basketball players who have to be able to read and react. That is what the game of basketball is about. It's about read and react. You cannot pre-program and predetermine your mind and your brain to have a certain philosophy that you're going to die in and game out. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster. If I'm coming into a game saying, hey, I'm only going to shoot these threes, if they run me off the line, I'm now doomed because I have not prepared myself to be ran off the line. If I say, hey, I'm only going and I can only score on my right. There's a lot of players like that. They can only score going to a certain way. And once that's taken away, they're done. Unless you're James Harden, who is like, he's going left and he's like, hey, stop it. And they just can't stop it. But everybody's not James Harden. But if you come in predetermined and you're not versatile enough, as soon as high-level basketball is in play, they're going to take your strength away. And if you don't have any backup plan, you're kind of going to be doomed. And I just look at this, and it kind of makes sense on why they, are where they are. And again, the crazy thing about this is the Kings aren't god-awful, but the Kings should be better than what they are, and they have higher expectations than what they're now fighting for. They are a team that came in and wanted to be in the mix for a solidified playoff spot, meaning not having to play in a play-in. Now at 12, with a below 500 record, you're now looking in, and now you're like, man, you got to get in the play-in. Now you got to make sure you're in the play-in and work from there. Then when we take a look of when they actually generate the shots, how they're shooting it. They're shooting 34% as a team overall, as we talked about earlier. They're shooting 32% on non-corner threes, and then they're shooting 38% on corner threes, which is about middle of the pack. They're doing really good at the mid, but again, a lot of teams, and damn, they're doing really good at the rim. If only they went there more. A lot of teams are going to live with you being able to shoot these mid-range shots as long as you're giving them the looks they want from the 3-point line on the opposite end. So these are things that I'm just looking at with Sacramento that some adjustments need to be had. And when you talk about the defensive side of the basketball for them, you see why people are screaming and chanting for Keon Ellis to get in. When the season started, I remember me and Kenny on the Numbers on the Board podcast, without any source, we were so confident that Keon Ellis was starting that I think Derek said something about Kevin Huerter starting, and we like, what? What are you talking about? And sure enough, Kevin Huerter was the starter. But if you look at Sacramento again, they're ninth offensively and they're 14th defensively. This is not a team that is just like god awful and it's like, oh my goodness, whatever. They just can't close out games, and I think the game plan and the scheme that they have is not going to lead to successful basketball, right? Like giving up threes, not being able to match the threes, and living with twos and trying to win with taking your twos to their threes. It's just not, in a more simplified way of speaking, it's just not, a scheme that's looking like it's going to equal a lot of good basketball. And again, Keegan Murray talked about the DeMar DeRozan acquisition and how, it kind of is more of an opportunistic role for him offensively, where some of the looks he got last year with the dribble handoffs, they're not there anymore. And he doesn't know where or how his shots are going to come during the course of each game. It's different. And the numbers and the stats show it. I mean, Keegan Murray is having this is the worst offensive year he's had in his, short career. And he, to me, was one of the biggest key pieces of this team having success. When Keegan Murray is shooting the ball at a high level, the Kings are always one of the teams that are extremely scary. You have your engine of the offense in De'Aaron Fox with his speed and his shot making. You have a bruiser on the interior with Domantas Sabonis, who is also an incredible passer. It could play off the elbows and be a brick wall screen setter. And you put that with Keegan Murray's floor spacing and his ability and strength of being able to play without the basketball. This team, to me, has always looked like it had some type of avenue of being good. I just felt like the DeMar DeRozan acquisition was cool, and you had to make a move. But again, it's another guy that takes the ball out of everybody else's hands, and it takes the ball a little bit more out of De'Aaron Fox's hands, which is not something that I want to see. I think the skill set kind of overlaps. And in a league where you need, extreme three-point shooting, you now have all of these mid-range maestros, so to speak. And the numbers have shown us that, they're losing by trying to win with their twos. And for the future outlook of this team, again, I don't know if there's a single-handed move that can save this season or this team. So when I see the rumors of Jeremy Grant, Cam Johnson, and all of these different names they're linked to, I don't know if it does anything crazy for me. You know what I mean? Like if the Kings went out and got Jeremy Grant right now with the contracts of Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles, and they may need somebody else, and we'll just whatever. Let's just say that works. What does that do for this team in a significant way? Does Jeremy Grant come in and alter the entire season, and all of a sudden the Sacramento Kings are just the most dangerous team out west? I don't think so. The West has continued to get better and better and better. And for the Kings to now look like they have taken a step back, again, it creates this reality where your future is going to be in flux. Because Keegan Murray is not anybody you should be looking to trade, number one. But then outside of that, what value do you have? You're not trading anybody, or you're not getting anything significant, in my opinion, for DeMar DeRozan. If you put him on a trade market already in half of the first year of his contract, you're saying, hey, this ain't going to work. I don't know if you get anything crazy for DeMar DeRozan. And I think you gave him a 3-year something contract. You gave him an extension before he played a single game. As good as Domantas Sabonis is, he's a particular type of center. And when you bring him into your team, you have to play a certain way. And because of that, that kind of teeters his market. Not that he's not a good player, but you have to he's not a plug-and-play type center. You have to know exactly what you want to do when acquiring Domantas Sabonis. And I don't know, what type of market he would have in order for you to get back a player that changes the trajectory. Malik Monk, all of these guys are really solid players, but I just don't know if they have a market that brings back enough talent to where this entire Kings team is different. And that leads to all signs of De'Aaron Fox ultimately being the one that you have to kind of move to get back assets and extreme value, whether that's a bunch of young players with high upside, star potential, whether that's a boatload of draft picks with some young talent. They've been rumored to say that the Spurs are now preparing and position themselves to be the team that if and when De'Aaron Fox, is on the market or made available, there'll be a suitor that's going to be aggressive towards that. And honestly speaking, outside of fandom thinking, because I know a lot of King fans, they don't want to hear this, rightfully so. Hey, man, from a business perspective for the future of my team, the Sacramento Kings, the Spurs are the exact type of team I want to trade for. They're the exact type of team I want to trade with. All of the future draft picks that they have, the Atlanta picks, and you know what I mean? You telling me we can get 3 of those and then we get some young talent? You know what I mean? We may not be able to get a Stephon Cass or anything like that, but the Spurs have enough young talent that can intrigue a team like Sacramento and kind of kickstart something. And once the domino of De'Aaron Fox, falls, I think you'd have a lot of other players behind him. You know what I mean? Looking to be moved and dealt to other contending teams that are trying to be better. So that to me is ultimately the sad part about this. Again, like I said earlier, it was not that long ago where the Sacramento Kings had the entire NBA world in the palm of their hands, kind of just rooting them on and cheering for them. I remember them playing against the Warriors. I felt like the Warriors were going to win Game 7, but deep down in my heart, I was rooting for the Kings, man. I was rooting for the Kings. I loved watching their crowd in the playoff series. I loved the environment. I loved how it looked and how electric it felt. I love when we first, got Light the Beam. I love the energy that we saw from Mike Brown, and then now see him in this position. He looks like a guy that even with his extension that he got, he might be on the outside looking in. And, as much as I like Mike Brown and what he's done for the Kings, it's hard to create an argument on why he shouldn't be. And I'm normally a guy that says, hey, stop trying to scapegoat the coach. The coach can't be always the first answer to everything. But when you look at some of the rotations, when you look at, some of the decisions that they've made, it is a reflection of him. It's a reflection of the general management. It's the reflection of the locker room and the players as well, because he's talked about some of the lack of execution, which, again, if you've watched as many Kings games like I have, because they play late and the games are always close, you'll see some of the poor execution that he is referencing. You know what I mean? And when you start to have situations where everybody is taking some of the blame and everybody is, part of the reason, all signs, again, continue to point to a situation where you might have to make a move that is going to be tough. And you have to come up with that decision. And it's a decision that I'm glad I don't have to be the one to make, where, again, you keep De'Aaron Fox, who's been a staple for your franchise and your organization. He's beloved by the fans, beloved by the organization. And you try to find a way to convince him. Hopefully he makes all NBA, because then you can pay him $300 million, which would make it a lot more easier to keep him. And you just you keep him, and you hope that he doesn't request a trade. But when you understand that he's Clutch Sports and Rich Paul, that's what they're about. Rich Paul is about taking his clients and putting them in the best position to maximize themselves as athletes, to be able to get the high leverage contract, to be able to get the endorsement deals, to be able to play on certain stages. Because once you play in high leverage basketball games in the playoffs and into the summer, you're now going to become a more household marketable name, and you'll have Gatorade commercials and this and that. And so they look at it way more deeper than just, let's get the biggest bag. But 5-year, $300 million deal, they're probably going to accept that. So you have to make that decision as a front office. Do we keep De'Aaron Fox and just be this average team that's looking at play in, and hopefully one year we can, strike gold and maybe get the 6th seed? Or do we kind of, bite the bullet, self-reflect, look inwards and say, hey, we move on from De'Aaron Fox while he's entering superstardom, and we try to get back a King's ransom, pun intended, and we pivot and we move forward by trying to now recoup and retool a franchise back into, a playoff contention, or even higher than that. It's again, when I say it out loud and I'm hearing myself say it, it does sound crazy considering that they just had their first taste of success 2 seasons ago, and here we are talking about trading their best franchise player of all time and kind of rebuilding or reworking what you have. It sounds crazy, but when you then on the flip side look at the other options and avenues that they have to be better, there's no real world when I look at the Western Conference right now where I can see the Kings being significantly higher than a lot of these other teams. And some of these other teams that are ahead of them, I think that they're better positioned and they're only a game or so, behind them. The Timberwolves, I think the Timberwolves are in a lot better position than the Sacramento Kings right now, and the Timberwolves are 14-13 because the Western Conference is that good. This is a down year for the Nuggets. This is a down year, and they're fifth at 15-11. This is a down year. The Mavericks, who just played in the finals last year, are 18-10 at the 4th seed. The Rockets, who are young as hell and haven't even made their move yet, are third at 19-9. The Grizzlies, who this is like their first year back essentially after having everybody out and all the Ja Morant shit, they're 20-9 at number 2. You have the Thunder at 22-5. The Warriors have been, all over the place this season. They're still 15-12, even though they're 3-7 in their last 10. You have the Lakers with JJ Redick at number 6, 16-12, who 5-5 in their last 10, and they still there. Kawhi hasn't even played a game for the Clippers, and they're at the 8th seed, 16-13, with James Harden as the leader. You got Vic and the Spurs at 15-13. Like, this Western Conference is dangerous and it's stacked. OKC is going to be intact for a while. Memphis isn't old at all. They're going to be there for a while. Houston is young as fuck. They're going to be there for a while. Luke is on the Mavericks, and that team ain't really old outside of Clay, and Kyrie is older. They're probably going to be there for a while. The Nuggets, as long as they got Jokic, they're going to find a way to be involved. The Spurs, young as hell with Vic. Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves, young as hell. The only other outlets that you have is possibly the Suns and their murky future because they are older with a Kevin Durant and the $50 million of Brad Beal. You have the Clippers, who are older, and the question mark is on Kawhi Leonard. That can give you some hope. The Warriors are older and the Lakers are. But there's still a good 5 to 6 teams that, as of right now, look like they ain't going nowhere. And to be honest with you, their future, their assets, the talent is better than what the Kings have. So when you take all that into consideration, it only leads to 2 avenues. And one of the avenues is an extremely tough one to accept and to think about. And like I said earlier, I'm glad I'm not the one in the seat that has to make that decision. But as always, I appreciate y'all. Let me know y'all thoughts, concerns, and opinions in the comments. I will see y'all next time. I'm out. Peace.